be now read a second time, and I call the member for Perth.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Appropriations Bill, a bill that brings into force a budget of missed opportunities, a budget that doesn't serve the Australian people in the way that they should have been served when it comes to investing in the infrastructure, investing in the community services, investing in the education services that this country needs. It is a missed opportunity when it comes to addressing stagnant wages. It is a missed opportunity when it comes to closing the gender pay gap. It is a missed opportunity to fire up economic growth. It is a missed opportunity to properly support small businesses, many of whom have sadly had to shut their doors in my electorate in recent months as the economic downturn really hits them hard. And it's a missed opportunity for so many things in the electorate of Perth. One of the things that has not progressed since the former Prime Minister Turnbull promised it is the Perth City deal. The Perth City deal should be embedded in this budget. It should be embedded in these appropriation documents, but it's not there. There is no Perth City deal. Nothing has progressed since it was promised by former Prime Minister Turnbull. If the government doesn't have any ideas on the Perth City deal, I've taken it upon myself to write to the Minister with some of the initiatives that could be in that city deal. Indeed, I encourage all members of my electorate, all Western Australians, to write to the Minister with their initiatives of what could go into this city deal, whether they be transport initiatives, initiatives that could help the people in the electorate of Cowan, initiatives that could ensure that we continue to fire up the West Australian economy. One of those that I'm very passionate about is light rail for the Perth City. I know that the Queenslanders are working towards a light rail-like proposal in Brisbane City. In fact, Perth will be the only mainland city, capital city, that does not have a light rail or similar service when the Sydney light rail does eventually open in coming months. There's been so many great proposals of light rail. It will do something truly transformative for Western Australia. Not only could we go with the Knowledge Arc proposal that would connect the great universities of Curtin University and UWA with some of our most important tourism assets, including Elizabeth Quay, Kings Park, the Perth Stadium and indeed the casino, if that's your thing. It would also connect huge parts of our business community together. It would be a shame for Perth to be the only city that doesn't have hop-on, hop-off, truly accessible light rail. I know that the member for Stirling is a passionate advocate for other light rail projects. The Scarborough Beach light rail proposal that's pushed by the City of Stirling is something else that would connect the Perth City to the beach, something that is sorely missing in our public transport network. I've also written to the Minister about the need to fund a homeless facility, a common ground homeless facility. During the global financial crisis, a number of states received funding for common ground facilities. There's one in Brisbane. It does fantastic work taking people from homelessness to secure, affordable accommodation. Western Australia does not have one of those facilities and it is sorely needed. We've seen a huge increase in homelessness in the West, driven by economic downturn, people who have complex drug and alcohol problems, and a change in economic circumstances that has really hit people hard. Our job in this place is actually to make sure that we have services that help lift people out of poverty and out of homelessness. The review of the Common Ground facility in Brisbane, done by the University of Queensland, in fact, found that it gave governments a saving of $13,100 per tenant per annum. Not only are you lifting someone out of poverty, you're also going to save the government money by investing in these services. I'd love to see it in the Perth City deal. There's also been lots of conversation in Western Australia about the need for an inner-city university campus. I have a slightly different view. An inner-city TAFE campus, of which we have some small TAFE campuses. We have Northbridge, East Perth, Leederville and Mount Lawley in my electorate. They all do fantastic work. But if I was given the choice, I would take a big, new, state-of-the-art TAFE facility in the heart of the CBD, open 40 weeks a year. One of the great things about TAFE is that it doesn't shut down for half the year, and no offence to the learned academics in the room who do very important work in that time when they are not doing important teaching and learning work. You read a lot. I've no doubt that I'm not the best read person in this chamber right now, member for Cowan, but I'd love to see a big new TAFE facility. It's something that could come in that Perth City deal. It's something that lack of investment in vocational education that's been historical. Last sort of 5 years, we've seen a wind down year after year in the investment in vocational education. I hope that the Perth City deal and indeed possibly the next appropriations bill I speak on might actually give an opportunity to increase that investment in vocational education. There are many states and many places in the country that would like to see themselves become home to a national Indigenous museum. Indeed, what we've seen from the work that's been done by the National Museum for African American Culture in the United States is that it has truly allowed the sharing of many stories that have been, until then, not shared, not told enough, or not communicated appropriately in other cultural institutions. Western Australia approaches its bicentenary in 2029. This is a long-term project, but it would be the sort of thing that would properly reconcile a very difficult past for this country in our historical treatment of Indigenous Australians with what we hope would be a brighter future for making sure that we treat them fairer into the future. And then there's of course, the standard community needs that you have. One of the huge gaps in my electorate that has not been addressed in this appropriations bill, and indeed was ignored by the coalition in the most recent election, is the lack of community facilities in East Perth. East Perth is in desperate need of a community centre. One option to fix that, an option that I know the Attorney-General and Leader of the House is a quiet supporter of, is redeveloping the Wacker ground, a cricket ground that stood for more than 100 years in the heart of Perth that provides, has provided some of our greatest sporting heroes a ground in which to perfect their craft. It's now turning into a community facility as we've got a beautiful new stadium, and I always make the point of giving credit to former Premier Colin Barnett for building that stadium. It is loved by Western Australians and he deserves due credit for that visionary decision. Sadly, it was expensive, but sometimes good things are expensive. It leaves the Wacker with no clear direction from government and in need of huge upgrades. Turning it into a community centre with gymnasium, community space, piazza would be one way of making sure that we grasp that opportunity and fill that gap of the lack of an East Perth community centre. The other thing that always concerns me when I look at these appropriation bills is just that we haven't got any clear long-term policy when it comes to childcare. Now, I commend the government for trying to put more money into the early childhood education and care space. I really do. It is such an essential piece of our education system and an essential piece of making sure that people can participate in the economy. And I pay due credit to the co-convener of the Parliamentary Friends of Early Childhood, who's in the chamber right now. But unfortunately, the policies that are funded in this budget aren't actually achieving their stated outcome. For long daycare, fees have increased 4.8% since December 2017, despite billions and billions of dollars more money going into the system. 73% of families have said in the government's own independent report of the new childcare system, 73% of families have said that they found that their fees had gone up or not changed at all. Less than half of providers, just 40%, said they felt there was enough support from the government for the transition to the new childcare system. 83% of parents say that the changes have made no impact on their ability to get a job, go to work or to study. 83% of parents are saying this system is not making it easier to get a job, to get more hours or to get the skills they need. The system isn't working. Yet we're appropriating more and more money to do more of the same, despite the government's own independent report showing it doesn't work. It's such an important area. Kids learn so much in the first 5 years of their life. It's important for allowing parents to go back to work. It's important for making sure that every child feels valued and every child gets those basic skills in life. And if we can't properly deliver that, then we really do have to look at whether the system we're continuing to fund is actually doing the job it's there to do. Despite the billions and billions of dollars in this appropriations bill, there is no money to continue the CapTel handset service. The CapTel handset service, for those who aren't aware, is a service that makes sure that people who have hearing difficulty can use a telephone like you or I would. pick up the phone, and the National Relay Service helps by speaking to the person on the other end, typing in what they say. It allows people to communicate with the outside world. It allows them to maintain or gain employment, and to save just $10 million in February next year, it'll shut. That service has no guaranteed future. That's wrong. It should have been in this budget. It's not. Similarly, not in this budget, there was no money to continue the service of Vision Australia Radio. It's a service that is based on the edge of my electorate. I should say it's technically in the electorate of Curtin, but it's in the suburb of Leederville. It provides a service so that people who have vision impairments... Deputy Speaker, as I was saying, this appropriation bill has no funding for Captel handsets and the 4,000 Australians who rely on them, has no funding for Vision Australia Radio and the hundreds of people with vision impairment who rely on Vision Australia Radio to make sure that they can hear the nation's news, that they can engage with the print texts that we all enjoy in this place. This budget locks in a 6-year Medicare rebate freeze. There's not 1 cent for the new West Australian Women's and Babies Hospital. The budget locks in historic cuts to the ABC, historic cuts to ABC Kids, historic cuts to ABC News, and a five-year program of cuts to vocational education. And worst of all, when you have a downturn in the economy, a need for active and urgent stimulus, there's nothing for New Start recipients. On the positive side, this appropriation bill does enable us to fund the valuable work of our public sector. I'll always stand up for the work of our public servants who make sure that our nation remains one of the best, if not the best in the world. They help you from everything from the tax office to Centrelink to making sure that the policy debates we have in this place are informed, sometimes dignified, but always in the national interest. And I'll just pause to note that today is Thank an Aged Care Worker Day. Aged care workers do so much to protect the most vulnerable in our society. They look after our grandparents, our family members, our brothers and sisters. They make sure that we give people the dignity in their later years that sometimes we are unable to give ourselves. Aged care workers do such difficult work. It is physical and it's deeply emotional. You only need to sit with an aged care worker for 2 or 3 minutes to discover just how much work they do, helping the elderly, the vulnerable in our society, work through not just entering an aged care facility, but some of those very difficult moments in their lives as they approach the end of their life. For me, I'm always take the time to say thank you to the aged care workers who helped my great-grandmother Rook when she was in an aged care facility before she passed. For me, as a teenager, they were incredibly nice to me at a very difficult time. And then a few years later, when they helped my grandmother Pat when she was in palliative care, aged care workers really are some of the most important workers in our society. It's appropriate to take a few moments to thank them for that work. So to the aged care workers of Australia, I say a very, very big thank you for everything that they do. There is about 1,700 aged care places in my electorate, but we have some 17,000 people over the age of 70 in the electorate of Perth. We need more aged care workers. It's one of the things, when I talk about funding of TAFE, when you talk about making sure that you have that workforce of the future, when we talk about the challenges of cutting vocational education, that is also a challenge in terms of cutting our future aged care workforce. It's a great career. It is a profession. It's something that I think, if we're honest in this place, many of us would not have either the guts or the dedication to do that job well. And unfortunately, many of us would look at the pay packets of those that work in aged care and say, that is a ridiculously low wage for that incredibly important work. So, on Thank an Aged Care Worker Day, I'm going to conclude my remarks by just saying thank you to the aged care workers of Australia. You deserve our absolute support, you deserve our absolute gratitude, and you deserve more funding both for your wages and for the facilities in which you work. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member.